Against a backdrop of economic reform, public protest, diplomatic tension, and cultural dispute, South Africa's political terrain is showing signs of movement. Recent analyses indicate growing support for the Freedom Front Plus and its leader, Peter Groenewald. Analysts describe this trend as part of a broader pattern of voter realignment, driven by dissatisfaction with traditional power structures and uncertainty over coalition governance. While the long-term significance of this shift remains unclear, it highlights a political environment that is increasingly fluid. Voters appear more willing to reconsider long-held loyalties, particularly as economic pressures and governance challenges persist. The rise of smaller parties also complicates coalition dynamics, forcing major players to negotiate influence in new ways. Taken together, these developments suggest that South Africa is entering a period of recalibration, where economic policy, public accountability, international positioning, cultural freedom, and political power are deeply interconnected. The decisions made in the coming months may not only shape headlines, but redefine the country's direction. The intersection of politics and artistic expression has now become a matter for legal determination. A South African artist has filed a lawsuit against the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture after being prevented from representing the country at the Venice Biennale, one of the world's most prestigious art exhibitions. The artist argues that the decision was politically motivated and infringes on the rights to freedom of expression. The artwork in question reportedly addressed themes of violence, loss, and global conflict, subjects that have become increasingly sensitive in the current political climate. The ministry has defended its decision, but critics say the case raises broader concerns about political interference in cultural spaces. Artists and legal analysts warn that if political considerations determine who represents the country internationally, creative freedom may be undermined. This case reflects a recurring theme across South Africa's current news landscape, the balance between state authority and individual rights. And as these debates unfold, they feed directly into a changing political environment. South Africa may be on the verge of one of its most consequential economic policy shifts in years. At the center of the discussion is a proposed change to the broad-based Black economic empowerment framework, a policy that has shaped corporate participation in the economy for more than 2 decades. Under the new proposal, companies would be allowed to meet part of their empowerment requirements by contributing money to a centralized transformation fund, rather than adjusting ownership structures or management representation. Government officials argue the proposal addresses long-standing concerns from businesses that existing compliance rules are complex, rigid, and costly to implement. By introducing a contribution-based option, policymakers say the state can mobilize large-scale funding, estimated at nearly 100 billion rand, to directly support Black-owned enterprises, small businesses, and strategic development projects. However, critics caution that the proposal raises critical questions. Will financial contributions replace genuine transformation? Who controls the fund? And how will accountability be enforced? Opposition parties and civil society groups warn that without strict oversight, the fund could become vulnerable to mismanagement or political influence. Economists have also questioned whether removing ownership requirements could weaken long-term structural change in the economy. The proposal is now open for public consultation, but its implications extend far beyond corporate compliance. It touches on employment, inequality, investor confidence, and the future direction of South Africa's economic model. And as this debate unfolds in policy circles, its ripple effects are already being felt elsewhere in society. While transformation policy is being debated behind closed doors, pressure from the public has taken a visible form on the streets. In Cape Town, workers from the film and television industry have gathered outside Parliament, protesting what they describe as prolonged delays in government funding. The industry, which employs thousands directly and indirectly, relies heavily on state-backed incentives to attract both local and international productions.
Protesters say delayed payments have forced companies to suspend projects, retrench staff, and in some cases shut down entirely. For many workers, this is not only a funding issue, but a question of survival. Industry representatives argue that creative sectors are frequently acknowledged in speeches as contributors to economic growth, yet often remain vulnerable when funding systems fail to deliver on time. They say the current situation reflects broader problems of administration, prioritization, and accountability within state institutions. The demonstrations have drawn national attention not only because of their economic impact, but because they reflect a deeper issue: how policy decisions translate into real-world consequences. As government seeks to reform economic frameworks like BEE, industries are asking whether implementation capacity is keeping pace with ambition. And beyond domestic concerns, South Africa is also facing growing scrutiny on the international stage.
South Africa's foreign policy stance has taken a sharper turn following a diplomatic escalation with Israel. The government has expelled Israel's senior diplomat, accusing him of making public remarks deemed disrespectful toward President Cyril Ramaphosa. In response, Israel expelled South Africa's envoy, marking a significant deterioration in relations between the two countries. This development does not stand in isolation. It comes amid South Africa's ongoing legal action against Israel at the International Court of Justice, where Pretoria has accused Israel of violations related to the conflict in Gaza. Supporters of the government's position argue that South Africa is acting consistently with its constitutional values and historical experience, particularly its opposition to oppression and human rights violations. Critics, however, warn that diplomatic confrontations could carry economic and geopolitical consequences, especially in an already fragile global environment. The situation highlights how domestic political identity increasingly shapes South Africa's international engagements. It also raises questions about how far the country is willing to go in asserting moral leadership, even when it risks diplomatic fallout. As tensions rise abroad, similar debates over power, influence, and freedom are playing out at home, this time through culture and the courts.